It would help to turn on the picture. I'm so sorry, and I'm a bit of a wreck today. I have the fan on the fireplace going, and I hope it's not disturbing the sound. Larry, I don't know if I'm not sure where he is. He is not going to be able to do the broadcast today. Whether he is completely done or not, I think all depends on having the funds to keep going, to stay alive, to stay in the fight. I don't know if much happened over the weekend. He certainly talked to certain people that he needed to talk to. So I don't know who. I didn't get to talk to him all weekend except for a brief, maybe a minute call. He had come home very briefly. So we're going to have Ellie with us. Ellie says that I'm not sure. Hopefully she can get in. If she can't, then I will call her. But while I'm waiting for her to try StreamYard to see if she can get in, I had a few things I was going to tell you that came from Larry from our discussion last night. He said, you know, the governor's race in Louisiana is an indication to us of what we face next year. The Democrats came out and 48% of the Democrats voted, and their candidate won with 48% of them voting. On the Republican side, although there are more Republicans, only 31% of the Republicans voted. If 38% of the Republicans had voted, because there are more Republicans there, if only 38% had voted, the Republican would have won. So the Democrats are doing a great job getting their soft base out to the polls. We have a job to do, folks. We have got to get people to vote. We have to get them to understand how important their vote is. Now, we have somebody on our team who lives in Louisiana. She interacts with a lot of senior citizens, and they were saying they had to vote Democrat because they had to be able to maintain and keep their benefits. But Trump has promised that he's working hard to try and help senior citizens keep their Social Security, for example. He wants to get rid of the illegals on welfare and do what's right for the country. And if you are disabled, there are things that he wants to maintain and help the veterans and so on. If you cannot vote, here's Ellie. Hey, Ellie, I'm just going to finish what I told you about the vote in Louisiana with the governor. If you can't vote, then get involved in a couple ways. We will talk about this the closer the election comes, but you can get involved in poll watching. There are a lot of things we can help you know how to do with poll watching. You can, if you can't vote, can you be an election judge? Can you participate in that way? You can certainly find a representative or a senator at the state or federal level that you can help do door knocking for or can make phone calls for. If you can't door knock, you can be given a list of people. When Judge Roy Moore was working, we got a list even from Alabama, and our team all over the country helped make phone calls for him. Now, we know there was a lot of voter fraud that went on when Doug Jones won, and there were college kids from Mississippi who came over in buses and boasted about how they can, they were able to vote in Alabama and turn the election to Doug Jones. I'm not going to say anything about Roy Moore at the time. I know he's thinking about running again, and now Sessions is apparently thinking about jumping into the race. So you got two candidates planning on defeating Doug Jones. But we have to participate. So it is not too early to start getting involved. Find out who your candidates are and volunteer to help. Help at any level, but do something. Don't just sit at home watching TV, just watching YouTube or whatever else you do. If you're babysitting your grandchildren, you might have, or taking care of your own children, working. There are things. Thank you, Gloria. There are things that keep you very busy. But that doesn't mean you can't make one phone call to a senator, one phone call to a representative, one phone call to a neighbor to talk to them about what's happening, one phone call to tell people about Larry and what you've heard here. I want to thank very much. I was late getting on because I got a phone call from somebody in another country who helped keep Larry in the fight this weekend. I tell you, anybody who steps up, no matter how much is given, is so greatly, greatly appreciated. So can anybody match Gloria's $5? That would be appreciated. Are you not getting the live broadcast right now? I'm not sure what you're talking about, LA. Anyhow, this is Ellie. She is from Arkansas. And I asked her to come on, and I wanted to tell you what Larry had said about the elections and the fact that, we are seeing socialism at work, socialism at play, and how things are rigged. But to even further that even more, I asked her, she's been following Larry for a very long time. I'd love to have you guys put in the chat when you first found out about Larry Nichols and how long you've been following him. I know for me, I first saw him in the Clinton Chronicles and the Circle of Power when it was played on PBS. I also bought Ann Coulter's book, High Crimes and Misdemeanors, and his picture was in there. And then I found him on Alex Jones in May of 2016, and he announced that he had his own show starting June 1st of 2016. And I have followed him every day since then. I don't think I've missed one day yet. Wanda, you do not have to use PayPal. The description box, let me see where my finger goes so you can see it. The description box under here gives you the link to the website. I'll type that in just a minute. And the website has Larry's address. You can mail cash to him. If you need to do some other way, if you need to send a check for some reason, there's a cell phone there that you can text, and we'll help you arrange some other way to get funds to Larry. So with that being said, Ellie, tell us about your experience, what you researched and found out about Larry Nichols, and then I had also asked you to talk about Arkansas in the day and the fact that the state was being run by the mafia, and when the Clintons came to Washington, they brought that whole system with them, and what that means for us.
Oh, okay. I hope you can hear me real good.
Real good.
Okay. I first found out about Larry Nichols. It was not really the Clinton Chronicles as much as the locals that spoke about him. Back in the day, here it was, wasn't worth it to have a phone because it was party line. So most people use the CB radio. So that's where I first heard about Larry Nichols, but him being a thug for the Clintons. And then I had run into the Clinton Chronicles, obstruction of justice, and I tell Larry I'm starstruck with him. I was mesmerized back then on him just going in and taking the info and walking away, and him not being killed. And that really just shocked me because we hear of Arkansas. And
well, it's not like they did, Ellie. It's not like they didn't try. They tried.
Oh yeah, I tell my brother and my sister and Amy, how they've tried many occasions, and the bullet holes and the whole 9 yards of what they tried to do with it, and even heard Bill Clinton say who they would want to see. I don't know if it was killed or taken out, and he said Larry Nichols, Larry Nichols, Larry Nichols.
His worst enemy. His worst enemy. Yeah.
And so the corruption in Arkansas that he was talking was, there's the boys on the track, but then you have so many other factors to what the Clintons did here. It's Tyson Chicken. It's Whitewater, it's Chinagate, it's the women, oh my goodness. Him being a serial rapist, Bill Clinton, to Hillary and her corrupt ways with the Rose Law Firm. And now here, I'm not going to be able to mention the Rose Law Firm because they're going to put a gag on that firm being used in the media like the whistleblower. So, you know, I'm going to get the Rose Law Firm out because they did a lot of shady stuff back then. And that's her little regime of the whole corruption. And we always said here that Hillary Clinton was the governor, not Bill, because Bill was out playing, partying. The stories you hear about the cocaine parties at the governor's mansion, that's out. I mean, Lassiter even bragged on it. And that was only about 10, 15 years ago. Some of them still, the Tyson story with the cocaine and the chicken, and they even have mentioned the parties that happened at the governor's mansion. And they took it to Washington. They took all their friends to Washington with them, but realized they had already set up the whole corruption scheme here in Arkansas. So when they left, either the stories would be squashed or the start of socialism could happen. And with the tax raises here, I truly believe when they hit us 127 times with taxes is what they're fixing to do to our nation now. The school system, Hillary took over the school system. She wanted to fire teachers here, and we were able to get her blocked on it. So that was taking over the school system, and then putting judges in spots. He had chief of police put in spots. He had his attorney generals, prosecutors, everything. And so it took us, I think, almost till now, this last election, to finally get the corruption out. And look how many decades that's been. We're talking 1980s until now, that our state finally went red with a very small county of blue that's hardcore Democrat. And of course, that's where all our info is for the boys on the track. Not only that, but some of the other scandals that happened here. It's all wrapped up in Saline County, and all of his friends and the people that worked for him back then are still in control. And when they get too old, they put their kids in office and put them in there, or their friends as kids. And that's what we're looking at right now. Even one that's real tight on who killed the boys, he is our drug czar to run the dispensaries here and be in charge of the dispensaries. And he was into cocaine in the 80s. And yet they put someone like that in charge of our dispensary. And to me, that's a scary thing, because if people do need it and they're doing it for the right reasons, it's a good thing. But I just see corruption happening out of it. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope for the best. But, you know, that's pretty much what they put in place before they left. And if you could see the way things were in the 80s with the Clintons, you could, like I said, I've told you about the Dixie Mafia. I didn't know much about it, but I heard rumors of it. And then when you start looking into the corruption into state officials that were here, then you understand what the Dixie Mafia really was. I mean, there was a little subsection. They went out and they did some things, but the political part of it is what I'm finding out. And it's stuff I'd like to really talk to Larry about, because it's something that I think we need to learn now, and that's why Larry's so important. I think I've told you this, Mary Ellen and others, that what Larry knows is so important. And I really want to get his story out to let people know that what he's seen is what they took to Washington and what has grown into the monster we see today and in the political party. And everybody says, well, why would Adam Schiff do this or Schumer do this? Or why is Pelosi doing this? It's what was brought into the political system when the Clintons went in office and what it's grown to today. Now, what I don't understand is why they keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. You would think they would come up with new ideas, and maybe it's because they're old.
No, Larry, there were 3 people who worked on the 86 plan, but Larry's the only one who is so dead set against it that he will give his life to take it down. And it is such an airtight, perfect system that they have to follow it. Mm-hmm. And so in order to defeat it, it would take the person who wrote it, and after he came to Christ and realized what he's done, he's just really had such a hard time. But we have to remember the book of Esther and remember what Esther's uncle said. Who knows, but you were born for such a time as this because of what you can do.
Mm-hmm. And they are using the same. I even heard a video last night I was watching that was basically saying the same thing. It has worked so well and no one is caught on that they'll start and they'll do one certain thing and they'll run the course through for the crookedness to push on the corruption. And what the corruption is bringing socialism and communism to our country. And this has been something that it was way before even the Clintons. But the Clintons, with Larry, with what he helped them with, has moved it along. So now all of the politicians are using that same system. I really do believe. You look at them with all their foundations. It was kind of unknown. I keep track of politics a lot. And it was unknown that all of them had foundations until the Clintons got in there. And it's their way of funneling this money. And they're just doing it over and over. For each new politician that looks good, you'll see them gain their foundation. And the foundation is how they move that money through and how they become so rich. And the Democrats will even say, it's a corrupt government. There's a deep state. Now they're pointing their fingers at us, but you know what? It's their politicians using this system. And I can't say that all Republicans are goody two-shoes and they're not using it, but the right ones are. There's those few that will use that to make the money. I don't know if they're totally corrupt, but if we don't educate everybody on what Larry Nichols knew and what he's seen when he was in the middle of the corruption, it won't help us today to fight the corruption that we're looking at right now. America is looking at what Arkansas did in 1981 and earlier, even 78, when the Clintons were Attorney General. And Larry's got the secrets to it. He really does.
Which is why we're here. I hear lots of, we have a few people who've been following him since the Clinton Chronicles. And when he was on YouTube earlier, they were following him then. And he went off for a while and now he's back. And, whether he's done now completely or not, I think will depend on the stress level he's under for whatever work he is doing is so horrendous that, he feels guilty about having to beg for money, ask for money. But the Bible says that the workman is worthy of his hire. And what he can do to motivate us and tell us about what's coming and keep us informed. I mean, some of the information he has given us really can be life-saving for us. And I know, we're all in this, most of us who listen here are in the same boat with a very small fixed income, no extra discretionary funds to do anything with, but we may know somebody who does have extra money. And for us to keep our mouths shut and not ask for help is wrong. You know, that's what Pastor Ernie Sanders calls the sin of omission. And he says that the Bible actually has more to say about what you don't do than it does about the sins you commit outright. Because for him who knows to do good and doesn't do it, it's sin.
Well, Mary Ellen, you know, we talked this morning, and that's why I extended our hand from Investigator News to you and Larry to, you know, that we're going to help you carry this torch forward. And we're going to help Larry get the word out. And, you know, we're going to spend more time with Larry. And we have to continue his story because the story didn't end in Arkansas. And that's what a lot of people need to realize is when the Clintons left Arkansas, it continued. And not only did it continue, but it grew with new people, new players. And now, let's see, Staphylopoulos, I believe, Face the Nation, I believe he's on. That was one of his little aides that, you know, pimple-faced little young kids that you would never believe would grow into something. Look at where he's at now. He puts the right people in the right places. So he put someone that strongly wants to push the Clinton agenda into the media. That's how they get the people in the media. And more, as we said in Arkansas, we're watching these same people get not only put in the media, but put into power. And then, you know, and we try to grab everything we can here to be able to show everybody. But the articles are disappearing. The video clips are disappearing. And so it's up to us, and, you know, people like me, we got to help Larry to take this torch forward to carry on his message, because we know, like I told you, we know he's just at his wit's ends. And us at Investigator News, we're gonna put our arms around him. We're gonna help him carry this torch forward, and we're gonna show his viewers and our viewers that what Larry Nichols has to say is so important right now, really important. And people need to realize that.
And it has been important for 30 years since he separated from Bill Clinton before Bill went to Washington. I mean, he tells the story about meeting Bill Clinton under a bridge in Little Rock, and he said, one of us is going to get run out of town, and it won't be me. But, you know, Larry's ability to defeat such a crime machine he used to work, if you've read 28 Years to Nowhere, you know, he said he would work up to 20 hours a day. And that's the level of work he's doing now. But what he's doing now is behind the scenes, whereas 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when he was on the radio it wasn't necessarily that he was traveling around. He did travel and speak when he still was healthy, but he's been doing this by phone for decades. And people didn't believe it. You know, it wasn't under their nose. It wasn't affecting your pocketbook. They didn't see the indications. But look at what happened. Look at what happened in Kentucky. We have 176,000 people in Kentucky who were removed from the rolls because they had died or moved. And the governor, during his campaign, protested and took it to court and said, I want those people that were removed from the rolls put back on. Well, that meant you had a lot of fake votes going out. That's voter fraud. Fake votes going out for people who had died and had moved away, and somebody voted for them. In my county, where I live in Maryland, there are more registered voters than adults in my community.
That's what they were discovering in California also.
North Carolina.
That there was a lot of dead people on these voter registrations. And they were also catching the same people coming back in and voting over and over. And And it wasn't until they hit a line they had already been in before had been caught. And Tom Fenton has been going around state to state, and he's getting them to pull these off. I know California has done quite a bit. I would have to check with my brother Larry and my sister Beth and see how far along it's come on them taking these voters off, because they were using dead voters. And you know, to me, how I envisioned it, and I know someone has made one of those funny joke pictures, is Hillary running around gravesite to gravesite to make sure she gets all the names. You know, that's how I think of when I heard about it. And I was like, she's creepy enough to do that. And because
I don't think she would, but she'd have somebody do it.
To me, you know, because I know so much about her and the stuff that they did here and the stuff from Larry, that they're just pure evil in their hearts. It really is. But the voters have got to even call, I think a lot of it's through your city hall, and ask them if they have removed the dead voters and listen to their response.
Go to your board of elections. You can
Yes.
do your state board, you can do your county board, and you can find out, you know, how many people do we have that shouldn't be here?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to call the rolls? I tried when I helped run the election. You know, I worked as an election judge. I did poll watching. I did poll watching several days, you know, when we had early voting. And on election day, I did some poll watching. I voted, and then I went and ran an election site as well. I was one of the judges, and I watched very carefully. I'm pretty good at recognizing a face when it comes back through, so I watched everybody coming in. Now, there were a lot of people that I wondered if they were legitimate citizens, but I didn't see, and you can't look at somebody's clothes, but I didn't see the same facial features coming in. Not that somebody didn't, but it wasn't real obvious in the 6 hours I worked, or 8 hours, whatever it was. I didn't see it, but I was watching for it. And one of the things that we can do as poll watchers is we need to have somebody not just right outside the door, you know, as far back from the door as you're allowed to be, and just watching there. The one place where I was poll watching, the neighborhood funneled into the school so that I could see where I was sitting. I could see half a mile down the road, and the huge parking lot. There was no place for a bus to pull up and drop people off to have a line of people coming in. So there wasn't that kind of voter fraud happening at the poll I watched. And I didn't see it. It didn't seem like, because of the numbers coming in or not coming in, it didn't seem like they had done that where I was an election judge either, even though it was a neighborhood that could have been primed for that. My concern in Maryland was, we do paper ballots, but they all are read by a machine. And you do not get a receipt that you voted. You do not get a receipt showing how they registered your vote. So don't tell me they couldn't just flip a switch and pull a pin and change everything. And there was no way to check that. And in 2016, Larry was talking about paper ballots and the importance. And so we had a lot of absentee ballots. I helped count those too. We took a ballot that came in the mail. It was folded up. We unfolded it, had a clean piece of paper. There were people from two different parties. You could have an independent with either a Republican or a Democrat, or you had a Republican and Democrat together. But you had to have two people look over every single one, and we watched over each other's shoulders and read off. One would read off the answer, you know, the votes on the incoming ballot, and the other one would mark them, and whoever was reading would watch to make sure that their opponent, you know, from the opposite party, was remarking that new ballot freshly. But then they were taken downstairs and run through the machine by somebody. There was nobody from our, you know, that we could watch to make sure they were. And even if you watched it, if the machine was rigged, there's nothing you could do about it. So we have a Republican governor in Maryland, but it is such a blue state. We are the second most gerrymandered state in the whole country, and I live in that gerrymandered district. And it's ridiculous because what they did right around DC, you've got these, and Baltimore, and then the two counties around Washington, DC are solid blue. And they cut the little itty bittiest ribbons all the way out into the remote parts of the state that are very solidly red. And so the Republican representatives we had from those rural areas can no longer get themselves a Republican who cares about their community, because the rich blue area around Washington, D.C. totally negates their votes.
Mm. Yeah, there was a lady that did, she was looking into the paper ballots here quite a few years ago. Black box voting, I believe it was called. And she was watching as they were taking boxfuls out to their dumpsters and dumping them, but at the same time from the cars going into the voting precincts. And she said that's what they were doing. They were bringing in box after box. And the ones that the voters actually did were being tossed in the garbage. And so she was trying to come up with a new system. And I haven't checked with her recently, but I always do right before the election to find out the status on that. And she says it's getting better and better of where they're putting them in strong boxes to where they can't be. And she says if the American people would just watch to see if they're taking boxfuls of paper out, maybe question that precinct and ask what they were. And just to say, hey, I seen what you were doing. You know, you can't really accuse them, but you could say, you know, I seen some boxes being taken out. I've got a concern.
Well, remember in 2016, there were videos showing young women at a poll, I think in Florida.
Uh-huh.
And they were stuffing, they were filling out ballots as fast as they could and stuffing them in a box. There were 12 boxes of votes found in a closet in Ohio, all filled out for Hillary. And guess what Ohio did? Insisted they be counted.
Yeah.
And you know, this, one of the things, Larry, when he was working for the Clintons, he was one of the bus drivers. They would take bus loads of people, especially in the city, and they would give them all a T-shirt. They'd all go in and vote. They'd have a voter's name registration. They'd go in and they'd vote. They'd come back out. They'd give them a different T-shirt. They'd switch shirts. They'd go on in. So you can't watch what people are wearing to check that. You've got to have some kind of facial recognition. Yeah. And let's see, in North Carolina in 2016, the state legislature voted for a voter ID law, and the governor signed it. And the Republican governor, Corey, I think his name was, the Democrat attorney general was running for governor against Corey. I think his name was Corey. Anyhow, he was running against the Republican governor. And he said, no, this has to go to federal court to verify. And Larry's going, why? According to the Constitution, a state legislature that follows the Constitution, there was nothing in their law that violated the Constitution. It was duly run through and done everything that needed to be done, and the governor signed it. They needed to stand on state law and their state's rights and keep the law. And the attorney general forced him, and we made phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. We shut down their phone. They turned it off and would not accept our calls, no matter what time of day it was, and wouldn't let us even leave messages on their answering machine. And it went into federal court. Of course, the federal court says this is not constitutional, because they claimed it was discriminating against the poor, and yet the poor have to have an ID in order to buy cigarettes and alcohol.
That's right.
So there was nothing discriminatory. But
they still try to push that today, Mary Ellen. They still try to run that through today of having a state ID, at least a state ID. It's like, oh, well, we can't afford it. But they're the same people you'll see at the local liquor store buying all the time.
Yeah.
So they have
McCrory. Chris just corrected me. It was McCrory. So I was close, but not close enough. Sorry, former Governor McCrory, for mispronouncing your name. And he also pointed out that there was a Democrat in North Carolina who voted 17 times in the 2016 election. Now, we know somebody who was here, I don't even know if the person was legal, and voted 5 times in Texas and was made an example of and got, what was it, 18 months in jail and a fine or a fine. And felt like she was being persecuted because other people did it. Why'd she get caught and, made an example of? So
we just have to, everybody has to keep their eyes open. They really do. And, I've even stated that to Miss Amy that works with us, that keep your eyeballs open when you go to the polls. And she's in Ohio. And I tell her all the time, we hear something in Ohio, we'll have you keep your eyes open. And, she's our eyes for Ohio this time.
Pray for Trump's team that is trying to counteract. There are more votes lost through the election fraud, which is the machines,
Yes.
than there is through voter fraud. Yes, voter fraud is a problem, and in some states it's a big problem. But the bigger issue is the machines, the election fraud. And that's when the machines are owned by Soros.
Mm-hmm.
In Maryland, the party in power gets to verify that the machines are working the way they want them to work. And so, they can go ahead and approve the rigging of the system, and there's nothing we can do about it.
And it did help with, I found out with a lot of people that were catching the votes being changed on those machines, that they were actually taking a picture of it. And, that it had changed and said, hey, it changed. And, that helped out a lot too, to let people know to keep an eye that is that vote. And
that was happening in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And the person from our team who was there, couple people, they protested, and the election judge came over and told them to do it again. They voted 3 times trying to get that thing to change, and it kept flipping the wrong way. Now, did they end up giving Hillary 3 votes before they could give Trump their 1 vote? I don't know. But they finally shut the machine down, and then they noticed that they took the out of order sign off as soon as they walked out the door.
See, that's something that, I'm a pretty quick voter. And so I kind of stick around and wait and kind of look and watch other people come in and watch how they vote. And in the precinct I went to, it was really, a lot of people were confused and took their time. And then I thought, if someone watched me vote and seeing how quick I voted, they would possibly think I was a fraud. And do I slow down? Do I not vote that fast? But see, I read all the issues before I go in. And I know all the names, so when I get in there, it's bling, 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 bling. But not everybody knows how to work them machines, especially our senior citizens. And that's where they get, like you said, busloads of them. They're not too savvy, and they can get in there and they can vote wrong and not even realize it.
Another thing you can do to help is the Democrats are so quick here, and they don't go in pairs with the Republican. Because we are mostly a Democrat county, the Democrats sign up to go to the nursing homes, and they go help fill out those ballots. Now, they're supposed to sign that they helped, but that doesn't mean they will sign them. And, if you stick it in the mail as an absentee ballot, anything can happen with that. And I was shocked at how many absentee ballots we got, because, I know a lot of us thought that was going to be a safer way to vote, and it wasn't. And now you got a lot of these nursing home votes come in by that absentee ballot,
Mhm.
somebody having filled it out for them or claiming they filled it out for them. And there's a lot of fraud that can happen that way because where are the Republicans pitching in? We are so silent. The
Mhm.
conservative church is so silent. We have to change. We can't do that. This is, as Larry has said, this is our last free election.
Mhm.
If Trump does not win, any vote, any election we ever have in the future will just be rigged, and there will
Yes.
be nothing we can do about it. And I wanted you to talk about, if you know anything about the legal system, the fact that our country has gone to such a socialist judiciary. Like Larry says over and over again, who are you going to call? You're upset. This needs to be done. That needs to be done. So do something about it. Who are you going to call to do it? Who are
Mhm.
going to do it for you? If you see something, I'm not going to say something, say something. No, if you see something, do something.
Uh-huh. But it's, I always thought, because everybody says, well, call your senators, call your congressmen. Well, the Republicans, yeah, they'll talk to you all day long. But if you look at it as perspective from one Republican to another, it gets nowhere. But you got to call that opposite party. And if first they were answering their phones and they were being, I say, dumb enough to answer your questions and give dumb answers. But then it turned to they didn't want to talk and they would take a message. It's turned a lot into that, and now it's gone to they're not answering their phones.
No,
It's leave a message. And so who do you call? And even if you see the corruption, at this point, the way everybody feels, if you call the FBI, is that going to be the good FBI or the bad FBI? If you call Department of Justice or State Department, are they the good guys or bad guys? And I think that makes everybody hesitant. Now, what they could do is get the vote. I mean, me and you talked about this earlier, to get out there and talk to your neighbors, the people at your church, and get the voters. Because at this point, the Democrats are in total denial. They're not answering their phones, and they do not want to talk to us.
They don't care about us anymore. They are so close to having what they want that they don't need us anymore. They're done. They've got the system locked up. George Soros is funding the down ballots for sheriffs and prosecutors at the local level. Then who do you call, even locally?
Mhm.
And when you see what has happened to Roger Stone,
Mhm.
the judge was the one who ruled in the Benghazi case. She
Mhm.
should have recused herself.
Yes.
There was another reason, and I don't remember what it was. Something.
Her husband was. I read that her husband was in the WikiLeaks, which she should have recused herself for. And then there was the two, and I think I heard that from Owen off Alex Jones. And then I heard that the two of the jurors were strong liberals, and that they would side with, the Democrat way anyway. So then you've got a tainted jury and you've got a tainted judge. So there was no way for Roger Stone to win. And to me, I'm curious on that, because where was his lawyer on this to stop this from happening? His lawyer, like Sidney Powell does for Flynn, should have said, nope, because you have a right to take jurors off. You could say, no, I don't want them. They're off. I love court TV and I love watching trials. And I know they can do that. They can say, nope, on to the next. You file them in until you're happy.
They may
also say
they may have done that. There are only so many you can refuse, I think. At least in Maryland, I think that's true.
Yeah, because it is different in every state. And the other thing they can do is they can also go to the attorney general if you feel that a judge is biased. And that was on court TV when it was court TV. I think it might even have been, I'm old, during O.J. Simpson, that because of Judge Ito, they thought he was biased for a while. But come to find out, I guess he was pretty fair. But they were talking you'd have to go to your state attorney general to see about getting the judge taken for another one. But see, that was something we looked into here with the boys, is that judge was a Clinton judge. And no matter what I think Linda Ives did, she could not get that judge removed. I have to ask her. That's one question I have not asked her, is why that judge was not removed off the case. But he grew to his old age, and he was even kind of doing the Biden brag and saying, yeah, we knew. But what can you do now? Here I'm fighting for the boys still to this day for justice. And we can't go back and say, well, we can punish the judge, because Larry will tell you this, the Clintons love to run statute of limitations out, because then they can't be charged. And a lot of stuff they've done, it's run out. And it's sad. So the only thing we can go on is to get the people and across America to know what the Clintons did, and know that the corruption is still going, and it's only handed, just like Obama. That corruption was handed to Obama, and he continued it. It was like watching the Clintons in power all over again, but to a weirder level to me.
The scary thing to me is, the mantra we keep hearing, she wasn't supposed to lose, she wasn't supposed to lose. Well, because she wasn't supposed to lose, it seems to me they march forward assuming that they're getting everything back next year, and Soros's money all the way down. Larry has said that with them, paying for the down ballots now, the people at the bottom of the ballot, they think it's already locked up at the top. Not that there won't still be more money paid in, but they're going for broke this time. And if she wasn't supposed to win, but they're sure they're getting it back, look at what they are doing to make sure that things are wrapped up. Look what happened with the Kentucky governor's race, the Louisiana governor's race, Roger Stone's lack of justice, what's happened to Flynn and Manafort, and the list goes on, just like it did under Clinton's days. And these are people that aren't necessarily being, Larry said to me one time with Manafort that he probably didn't have the clearance, or there's some special thing you got assigned to be allowed to do lobbying with another country. And so when Larry was asked to help, a country that had been totally destroyed, and they wanted to fight back, and they wanted Larry's help, and he couldn't. He said, I can't. He said, if I'm caught helping you, he'd be done. And he's got to give his time and attention and effort to staying alive and staying strong enough to help us. And knowing the power that is out there, I mean, when we ask questions, why isn't somebody helping him? He's doing all this work for free. Why isn't he being paid? Well, he's not being paid because he's Larry Nichols. And his reputation, as much, Ellie, as you and I and most of the people who are here listening and are in the chat, as much as we appreciate what Larry has done and recognize his value and recognize that he is truthful. We get trolls in here that try to, knock who he is. And we recognize that. But see, there are a lot of people who have a lot of negative things to say because he was associated with the Clintons. And if anybody finds out who he's helping, that person would be done.
Yeah. The thing is with what happened here that Larry knows, and what he took, you can only imagine the early twisted news that they did on Larry. And I seen it over the years, and he really couldn't get his correct and truthful news out till at least 10, 15 years after he left, because no one was listening to him. He was like the when I seen him on the Capitol stairs and just yelling that people had to listen, they wake up, and they didn't. And it was almost like the story wanted to die out by the end of the Clinton era. And, I thought when Bush came in, it was like, hooray, now everybody's going to hear what the Clintons did.
It was the Bush.
No, the Bushes were inviting the Clintons for dinner. And they were like, oh, he's my son. It's like, what? No, that's not your son. You're confused, old man. That. And then that's when it clicked that, yes, they had been together all that time. And so you knew when they were having the Clintons over and going on vacations together that we really couldn't depend on the Bushes to help us here. And so we had to move on. And then Obama got in, and oh my gosh, the corruption, like I said, it grew from the beginning all the way to today.
But Ellie, no, there were no scandals under Obama's rule.
Oh yeah. Oh, I used to point them all out, like the kids in cages. I swear, I was the only one screaming, he's got those kids in cages. How dare him? How dare him put those kids in cages? And you know what? No one paid attention to me. Okay, so here comes Trump. Oh, he's got kids in cages. I was like, no, those are the pictures from Obama. I had people swear to me, even decide they weren't even going to be friends with me no more over that one. Because I said, no, those are the pictures from Obama. I told you those were. And he was putting them in cages. Nope. And then it all came out. Yep. It was Obama's pictures of those kids in those cages, and see, that's how they twist things. And that's what they did to Larry. They were so trying to get him discredited.
And as Randy just said in the chat, it wasn't until the British press picked up Larry's story that it finally put enough pressure on the American press to do something. And that was over the Vince Foster murder.
You want to know something so funny is I'm a fan of Rush Limbaugh, and I have been on his show twice. And once I mentioned Larry Nichols, and that was early on. I'd love to get back on there now and say, Rush, remember when I was on your show and I warned you about the Clintons? And it was in 80, I'm gonna say 89 when I got through. And I tried to warn Rush Limbaugh of the horror that was coming to Washington. And
you can't believe it. It's a governor from a hick state. No, what could he bring?
Yeah, and people were like, "Oh, those are just a bunch of hicks. They don't know what they're talking about." Well, no, I'm from California. I'm not born, raised here. I came here in the 80s. We went back to California, so they can't call me the dumb hick. But I like to play the Southern gal, but I'm from California, and when we moved back out here, the little community we moved into called us California gangsters. So I did it both ways. Either I'm an Arkansas hick or I'm a California gangster. But I have the finest police officers in my family, and some have retired and moved on. But we totally respect and honor our police force. We really do. And we have veterans in our family, just like you. We've talked about it. And this is what we fight for. With Larry Nichols and what we know that they have done to this country, it's time that the Republicans do stand up and they do fight for this country like they never have. This is a way of maybe World War III in voting wars, because I do believe it is good and evil. It was to me in the last election, because I knew how evil Hillary was. And it was like, it's a good and evil vote. And people can't handle that. They just can't handle the fact it's a vote of good and evil. They want the politics behind it. But it is, and this one will be the same way. It's the good Christians have got to fight against the evils of what's being promoted, brought in. It's called socialism. It's socialism versus capitalism, but I don't. Capitalism is really strange because you got to look at it. Because some ways it does seem kind of tyrannical, but it's not. But it's more than that, Mary Ellen. This last vote and this one, and we're Christians, and we have strong beliefs in Christ, and it is a vote of good and evil. It really is.
Yeah. I was really frustrated this weekend. I made the terrible mistake of being shocked at something I heard with alt media, somebody who claims to have great credibility. Every time I've heard something that caught my attention and I asked Larry, I have found out it's not true. But this was so extreme in praying for the president. And there was a piece of it that was plausible, that for the sake of the need for prayer, I mentioned it. And now I just am kicking myself because Larry said, no, that's not true. Well, there was mention of a weapon that can cause heart attacks. They can kill by heart attacks. And so there was a mention, and it has spread. I can't believe how many alt media people are talking about how this happened Friday night, that at like 1 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, Trump went down to Walter Reed because he was having chest pain. And I have talked to somebody who travels with Trump. And what happened was he had an appointment with the doctor to do his physical early, not because there was any problem, but he had a physical now because when he usually gets his routine one, it's in February, and he'll be in busy campaign mode. And so he wanted to go and get it out of the way. And we heard on the news he got a clean bill of health.
Mm-hmm.
But oh no, he was rushed to the hospital. When I finally got a chance to talk to Larry, he said, that's not true. And now I have confirmation from somebody who actually travels with the president all over the country. It's not true. And yet one alt media person after another is picking up this story. Yes, there is a desperate need to pray for the safety of our president. There is. But this is purely speculation on my part, purely speculation, I will admit it. But it makes me wonder, is there still somebody at the White House fighting against our president who has realized that there are certain alternative media people, if they feed a story like this, they'll spread it everywhere. And if their intent is to make us lose faith in our president because we're questioning whether he's healthy, that's a problem, because then people will either not vote or will vote against him. We don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need that.
No, for his age, oh my, he's in better shape than I am, and I'm way younger than him. But I don't know. I think it's because he kept a clean life. He don't smoke, he don't drink, he didn't party in the 60s like the rest of us did, and he is totally a healthy man. And I can only imagine him. I'm just guessing. I bet he does a lot of vitamins or something, because he is just clear of thought. He tweets at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like trying to pick my head off the desk at 3 in the morning. I couldn't imagine tweeting anything that made any sense at that hour, or even at 5 o'clock in the morning, first getting up. But he's on it. I want the coffee that Trump drinks. Have his own brand of coffee that just wakes him up and works him up. I want that coffee. So.
Yeah, I mean, when I even think of the things that Q has said that I keep taking to Larry, and that's not true, that's not true. The number of sealed indictments, and that number was growing and growing. Well, there are sealed indictments all over the country, but that doesn't mean that it's the top ones we're waiting for.
Right. You
It's-
can find out through the whitehouse.gov, I believe it is, on the indictment status. And their names I've never even heard of. And it looks like the sex traffickers, a lot of them that are coming through, but there are a massive amount. And when you go back in archives and look at what was going through during Obama years, it just exploded right now. So there are massive amounts. It's like you said, it might not be the people we want. I say to viewers and to friends, I believe those are the squealers. They're going to get the people that will talk first, and they're just going to go up the ladder as they go. And they're going to get to the next one and to the next one. But at the same time, I think there's well-known people in Washington that they have pulled in that have talked. You just kind of hear it when you listen to what Tom Fenton sees and Nunes, and even John Solomon on some of the stuff happening in Ukraine. You can see they're pulling and they're indicting and they're talking to people. But whitehouse.gov has the indictments that are being passed.
Well, my concern with some of these things, it's coming that we see in the alternative media with Q, and I mean, I could list off a whole bunch of people. My concern, Ellie, is that these people getting everybody all excited increases their viewership, because they are saying things that we want to believe. But I'm really concerned that by the time they have said it over and over and over and over, when it comes time to vote, people are going to throw up their hands in disgust and stay home.
Well, I don't know if they'll stay home. I think at this early stages and the massive amount showing up at the Trump rallies, they see the urgency to go. And I mean, his crowds are just horrendous. And
That's the hard base, though. That's not the soft base. That's the hard base.
Yeah, true. But just from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, more people, I think, are more willing to vote this time than last time, which is really good. And it's only because the weird info that is coming out of Washington. I've listened to some of the new guys. They're real young. They're doing a lot of the podcasts and their own little YouTubes for like the colleges, and even the kids at the college. And this is what got me to maybe want to go out this next spring and try it. The kids at the colleges don't like being lied to, and they're finding out they've been lied to, and it's starting to spread slowly, but it's starting to spread. And that's what we need, as well as it getting out with Trump. And even if the news people repeat it over and over and over and over again, all I'm finding is people are saying, I don't even want to watch the news, because they're going to tell you what they said Monday. It's Friday and they're still talking the same thing they did Monday. They just don't watch the news. And it's getting to be a lot of it that way. And it makes it harder for people like me. So what I try to do is the off the track news of stuff that people want to hear going on in the country, and not just that same impeachment, or it's going to come out, or, hearing for the umpteenth time of the corruption of the Pelosi camp that she did last week, and that I really think if the news media wants to sit and repeat it, they're just going to lose viewers, Mary Ellen. They really are.
I hope so. It is after the hour, so I'd like people to type in the chat if you would like Ellie to be a regular here. If Larry can't be on, I vote for it, but I'm gonna let you guys decide. If anybody can do anything donation wise with Larry,
Yes.
he's hurting really, really badly. he was able to get some money that has helped him to get back to square one, but then he was sinking really fast again today. I don't know at what state he is. I know he got some money for treatment today, but I don't know if it was, I don't know how much it was or, enough. And that the phone call from that donor is, I was on the phone with, which is why we were so late getting started, because it was out of country.
Yes, give.
I'm hearing Ellie, yes, please bring her back. Okay, so what's going to happen with Larry, I don't know. We will keep this going until Larry has regular income to keep him ahead of the game. Please be praying for him, and please be paying for him.
Yes, help Larry out, really do, with prayers, and we got to get him better and get him stronger, so we can get him back on. I would love to do a show with him many times more.
Thank you. We've got a lot of people here voting. Yes, Ellie's great job, Ellie. Thank you. I wait for her to be a regular. We adore Ellie. So, all right, folks. If Larry can't be with us, I'll get together with Ellie and she'll be here as our backup. She's a wealth of knowledge beyond what I have, and I apologize for my lack of professionalism and folks, I'm just an old lady doing the best I can with what little information I have. So thanks for being here. And again, Larry's PayPal is nicholslive@aol.com. The website, nicholslive.com. No, John.
So on Facebook also, I'll throw the heart up. The big pink heart on our page for Larry and his info.
Say again.
I will also post. I have a pink heart that has Larry, and it has the AOL.com on there. I'll throw it up this afternoon when I get off.
Thank you.
And for our viewers also.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. Anyhow, we're doing the best we can, and I want to say thank you for you all being here. Thanks, Ellie, for joining me. Thank you for everybody who's in the chat today. I've really appreciated your comments. Thank you to everybody who has donated today. Thanks for those who donated over the weekend. And keep it coming. Keep spreading the word. And when you can't give, if you genuinely cannot give, as many cannot. You do have time. You can give up time. You can give up a meal. You can spend time in prayer for Larry, that God will keep him going, that God will have mercy and let him stay in this fight. So thanks, folks, and we'll be back tomorrow, one way or another. So I didn't get it set up over the weekend because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with Larry because of how fast he goes down. Thank you, Beverly, so much. I appreciate what you had to say. So thanks, folks. We will be back tomorrow. Somebody will. I'll be here, and we'll find out who my co-host will be, whether it'll be Larry or Ellie. And if we can find a way to get them both on, we will do that. I haven't figured that out yet. Supposedly, I can have 6 people on at the same time. I have not figured out. So I got to get that information and get that worked out so we don't have to bounce back and forth one at a time. So thanks a lot. God bless. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.